In the 1980s, Ralph Lauren clothing was synonymous with the American dream. But with the major crack epidemic hitting Brooklyn at the time, this dream of success and prosperity was unthinkable. So a crew known as the Lowlifes crew simply robbed Ralph Lauren clothing and took a slice of the American dream for themselves. And instead of becoming villains, these guys became heroes. Rack Low, a founding member of this crew, does not paint a pretty picture of what Brooklyn was like during this time. In an interview with the fashion magazine Hunger, he said, "The sights were poverty, seeing young black kids who fought daily in order to avoid becoming statistics. Gun violence was terrible in the 80s, and I lost a lot of good friends as a result of gun violence. But hip-hop music and the culture saved many of us." For many members of this gang, the first thing they stole was food. Stealing was simply a means of survival and to stop yourself from starving. Then, stealing turned into something that they could make money from. Robbery could also pay for things you couldn't steal, like rent payments and electricity bills. Gradually, they transitioned from stealing things they needed to stealing things they wanted, and one of the core things they wanted was designer clothing. Around this time, there were two Brooklyn street crews that wore designer clothes, and particularly Ralph Lauren. For many of these people, Ralph Lauren was an inspirational figure in his own right. He came from a Jewish immigrant family in the Bronx and had to work his way to the top. His real name is Ralph Lifshitz, which he had to whitewash his own name in order to fit into the industry. In St. John's Place in Crown Heights, there was a gang known as Ralphie's Kids. They were called this because of their age and fondness for Ralph Lauren. A 15-minute drive from this place is a housing project called Marcus Garvey Village, which was home to a crew named the USA, which stood for United Shoplifters Association. The streets of New York became their catwalks, and if you're in New York and want to receive as many onlookers as possible, you got to what's known as the Deuce. This is a less commonly used term for the area covering Times Square, 42nd Street, and Broadway. Both of these crews came across each other regularly at these spots. At first, they plotted to rob one another and simply take their clothes. However, an unlikely event took place which would alter the course of any future gang war. Because of their flamboyant image, people loved taking photos of them. During one photo, members of Ralphie's Kids and USA got in a photo together. Instead of seeing themselves as enemies, they joined together. It was the start of a beautiful friendship built on a shared love of shoplifting. Since they both joined forces, they needed a brand new name. One of the founding members, Thurston Howell, was out one night. He got a girl's number, and later that night, this girl caught him speaking to another girl. She yelled, "That's some low-life shit." During this time, they were referring to Polo as Low, and she unknowingly handed them the perfect name. Hal responded, "Yeah, you're right. Low is our life." Thus began the Lowlifes. They saw stealing clothes as a sport, and to their credit, they were incredibly good at this sport. One way of stealing was to casually walk around the store and secretly sneak an item of clothing down your shirt or pants and walk out. But a more successful technique was to attack the store on all fronts. A large group of the Lowlifes would simply descend on Macy's or Bloomingdale's at the same time and suddenly clear the racks of Ralph Lauren clothing. This could completely catch the security off guard and was known as million-man rushes. During one of these raids, Rack Low saw clothes he wanted, but it was on a mannequin. So naturally, he simply stole from the mannequin. For the police, the problem was that they were no ordinary thieves you would find in clothing stores. They were incredibly organized and meticulous in who they targeted and when. Their chief weapon was the weapon of surprise. Photographer Braden Olson said, "They made it clear they were not petty thieves either. They had complex plans and carried them out very professionally. They would travel to other nearby states where the stores were not ready for anything like that. One guy even said he used to buy plane tickets to Puerto Rico just to get gear. In fact, they weren't just wearing these clothes but also selling them. They were nicknamed boosters and sold designer clothing on the street for much lower prices. However, not everyone in the Lowlifes was stealing things for a living. Rack Low told Complex, "I would say about 75% of the people that were clicked up with us in some way or another went boosting or robbing, snatching chains, dumping pockets, something. But not everybody was into that lifestyle. You had guys that held down 9-to-5s. As the group continued to grow, the department stores they were stealing from were hit hard by these robberies. B. Altman's, a luxury department store and chain, closed down in 1990, and it's alleged that at least part of the reason why is because of these robberies. The Lowlifes had several different teams working on a regular basis, so it became almost too much to control for the NYPD too. In the early 90s, the future fashion model Tyson Beckford was living in Brooklyn and trying to break through into the fashion world. Like many people in the neighborhood at the time, he was a bit suspicious of seeing someone dressed head to toe in Ralph Lauren. Through a shared interest in fashion, he became friendly with members of the Lowlifes. Eventually, he realized that these items of clothing were bought with a 5-finger discount, so he distanced himself from them as he felt it might impact his modeling career. While high-end fashion was seemingly beyond the grasp of Black Americans, the hip-hop magazine The Source was trying to bridge the gap between hip-hop culture and high-end fashion. In 1992, The Source recruited Beckford and gave him his big break with his own fashion shoot. A year later, Beckford was hired by Ralph Lauren to model for their Polo line of male sportswear. Presumably, he didn't tell his boss that he was previously affiliated with a group who were robbing their clothes. Simultaneously, Tyson was now a huge deal within the Lowlifes. Before the Polo shoot, he was only friendly with the low-end members of the Life crew. After becoming the face of Polo, founding members like Thurston Howell were now introducing themselves to him. A year later, Ralph Lauren's Snow Beach pullover would feature in the video of Wu-Tang's Can It All Be So Simple. Raekwon wore this pullover and was considered an honorary member of the Lowlifes. Throughout the 90s, the prevalence of the Lowlifes seemed to dwindle. Some of the members unsurprisingly had to go to jail, whereas others opted for 9-to-5 jobs. While the Lowlifes' presence was dwindling, so was Ralph Lauren's imprint on hip-hop. The clothing label was seen as ignoring hip-hop, whereas its competitor, Tommy Hilfiger, was actually embracing hip-hop artists. Rappers like Grand Puba and Snoop Dogg were literally given free clothes by Tommy. It wasn't until the early 2000s that Ralph would be back on track with artists such as Kanye, Big Boy, and Fabulous promoting their clothing. Thurston Howell was the only member of this crew that was able to build a rap career off the back of the Lowlifes. He got a job at MTV and used this job as an opportunity to try to battle famous rappers. He tried it with Jay-Z, who told him multiple times that he wasn't ready, but when he battled Busta Rhymes, Busta tried to get him a record deal. He soon appeared on The Source's Unsigned Hype and appeared at Rap Olympics in 1997, the very event which landed Eminem a deal with Dr. Dre. Eminem, as a matter of fact, was someone Thurston battled regularly and someone he respected. And there aren't many bigger compliments you can get in hip-hop than that. Although the Lowlifes weren't what they used to be, the tradition was kept alive, except this time without the criminal element. In the late 2000s, Rack Low started hosting Low Goose on the Deuce events, which became a celebration of streetwear and hip-hop music at the Deuce. In an interview with Fader, Rack Low said, "To be honest with you, until this very day, you have boosters that were Lowlifes in 1998 and are still boosting in 2016. So a lot of people made positive changes, but for some people, this is still the hustle." When Thurston Howell was asked what one message he would like to give to the world about the Lowlifes, he said, "This is a culture, not a trend. We don't love Ralph Lauren. It's not about him and his clothes. It's about us and our connection to one another. We initially maybe had a negative effect on our neighborhoods with the boosting and all that, but once we transitioned to having a positive message, we were able to pull so many people into positive routes. Through our people and our brotherhood, we made a worldwide culture, every color, every ethnicity. We don't discriminate. It's all about love and loyalty." And in a strange twist of fate, Ralph Lauren has not only embraced hip-hop culture, but embraced the very people who once looted many of his department stores. Thurston Howell's book, Bury Me with the Low On, was on sale on the Ralph Lauren app. And in 2018, they brought back the Snow Beach Polo line and hired Howells as a model. Ironically, the very people who stole Ralph Lauren have benefited this company in the long run. They have also helped bridge the gap between hip-hop and high-end fashion. John Caramanica wrote in the New York Times, "Today, the genre stars collaborate with high fashion houses or create their own clothing lines. None of that would have been possible without the Lowlife blueprint."